Hey everyone, it's Wingspan TT, and if you're watching, you know what time it is. No, it's not time to write to your legislators about the pressing need for tort reform. It's time for Duels of the Planeswalkers 2013. Today, we at T3 are once again getting an exclusive look at the next Duels 2013 DLC deck pack. And while some people had rumored and postulated that this DLC would include stuff like a Dimir deck and a 5-color deck, what they didn't, okay, I guess they were absolutely right, alright? Okay, it was partly Wizards of the Coast's fault, it was partly Stainless's fault, and you know, personally I like to believe it was also my parents' fault because everything is, after all. But we're not here to assign blame, that's what lawyers are for, alright? So today, we're just going to review the top 10 cards of each deck and why I think you'll enjoy playing with both of them. So let's begin with a look at the Dimir Black and Blue deck, Rogue's Gallery. This dark and shadowy deck is designed with card advantage in mind, so whether you're drawing tons of evil spells or tearing the thoughts straight out of your opponent's head, you can quickly gain an upper hand in options. If you're a fan of nefarious deeds and back alley dealings, this deck's for you. First up is Dimir Cutpurse, and this guy's pretty basic, a 3-mana, 2/2 spirit. He looks like something from The Mummy, or The Mummy Returns, or Don't Tell Mummy the Babysitter is Dead. But whenever the Dimir Cutpurse deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you draw a card. This guy is at the heart and soul of what Rogue's Gallery is all about. And if you can get him through, whether just basically attacking because your opponent doesn't have any blockers yet, or perhaps you've removed their blockers, or perhaps you found some kind of sneaky way to bypass his or her blockers, Dimir Cutpurse is going to cause major pain because every turn this creepy little ribbon guy gets through to attack, you're going to be getting a +2 card advantage on your opponent because you're going to be drawing, they're going to be discarding, they're probably also going to be crying at the table or through Xbox Live or PlayStation. You're going to hear them over the mic. It's going to be delicious. I'm looking forward to it. Next up is a particularly evil spell, Memory Plunder, and for 4 mana you get to choose blue or black and blue, whatever you want. At an instant speed, you can play an instant or sorcery card in your opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. So perhaps you've gotten out your Dimir Cutpurse or other ways to empty their hand early in the game. Your opponent, all their good spells, they're expensive spells because typically when you discard a card, when you're forced to do that, you tend to discard like the real expensive spells you don't know if you're going to get a chance to play anyway. Then the next turn, you get to play Memory Plunder on that person, steal that spell and use it against them. It's absolutely vicious. It's absolutely cruel. You've got some kind of merfolk casting a fireball underwater. I don't know how it works. He learned it from SpongeBob SquarePants. It doesn't matter. It's going to be hilarious. You know, there are some cards like Blood Artist and Falcon Wrath Noble that do prissy little things like, you know, when a creature dies, you gain 1 life. Well, Harvester of Souls is a bat out of hell. He's some kind of evil bat demon creature, and he doesn't want any of that pansy ass gaining 1 life garbage. He's 6 mana, he's a 5/5, he's got Death Touch, which is a little overkill for a 5/5, but I'll take it. And whenever a creature dies, you can draw a card. That's right, you wipe the board, you're gonna draw a bunch of cards. Your opponent sacrifices creatures, they're drawing cards. They kill some of your other creatures that aren't Harvester of Souls, you're drawing cards. So basically, no matter who's losing stuff on the table, you're winning. And this is gonna put a big target on Harvester of Souls' back, but it's also gonna put a lot of pain in your opponent's soul, isn't it? And really, your opponent's soul is the one that's getting harvested when this hits the table. Most of you are probably too young to remember Baron from the Tolarian Academy. Great friend of Urza. I believe he was the father of Hannah, which, you know, if I were him, I would have pulled out my shotgun. But anyway, the point is, Baron's spite, he got angry during the whole invasion of Dominaria, and he decided that when 2 blocking creatures were hanging around, preventing his guys from getting through and attacking, he was just going to wipe them both out, and that's exactly what Baron's spite is going to do here. Because you want to get your Cutpurse through, you want to get your other creatures through, and there's pesky blockers in the way. Well, why don't you just choose 2 target blockers, 2 target creatures, 2 target anything? Sure, your opponent gets to choose what happens then. They're going to have to sacrifice 1 and return the other to their hand. But guess what? Those 2 creatures aren't going to be on the board anymore. And if that leaves a wide opening for your Dimir Cutpurse or other creatures to just sneak right in and get some damage and card advantage machine going, that's going to be great. And even if you're not just trying to get rid of blockers, this can slow down aggressive decks so much. They have 2 goblins on the table, they need to lose one and drop the other one back in their hand and force them to recast it next turn to slow down their game, giving you more time to set up your evil machinations. Speaking of 2-for-1 deals, Agony Warp is absolutely up the same alley, the same dark alley where you're gonna stab people and steal their mind. Alright, for 2 mana as an instant, you can give one creature -3/-0 and another creature -0/-3, but they don't have to be separate creatures. You could give one creature -3/-3. This is so cool. First of all, you can obviously change combat so much. You can kill 2 creatures with it. If one creature has a toughness under 3, bam, it's instantly dead. You can make some other creature, maybe they attack with a 3/3, and you have some 3/3 blocker, but you don't want to trade, so you make their 3/3 a 0/3 and then block with your guy, and now that creature's dead too. Agony Warp is so cool for just 2 mana, being able to change combat, being able to change the dynamics of the battlefield at a moment's notice. So cool. 2-for-1 people, 1-for-1 people, doesn't matter. You are going to get to call the shots. People are always complaining about Panoptic Mirror. Wingspan, how can I win when my opponent gets infinite turns? I don't know, maybe you should do something like play Painful Quandary, so even when they cast spells, they have to lose 5 life unless they get rid of their whole hand. Now I know that's not really fair, because they can just stock up extra cards and then discard them. But you get the idea. Painful Quandary for 5 mana is a great enchantment. When you drop this on the board, if you are lucky to get this out on turn 5, your opponent is going to have a hard decision every single time they want to play something. It's kind of like Forced Fruition, although it costs 1 less. Forced Fruition, forcing the opponent to draw 7 cards, forcing them closer and closer to decking themselves. Painful Quandary is going to force them to choose between massive card disadvantage or massive life disadvantage. Whatever they choose, they really can't win, and unless they played themselves into a corner already, this really is a Painful Quandary for most opponents. Simple and sexy, the Sangromancer costs 4 mana. She's a 3/3 flying vampire shaman. Now just look at the art, absolutely gorgeous, absolutely entrancing. But what I love about Sangromancer isn't so much the art, it's what she does for this deck. You see, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, essentially, you gain 3 life. And whenever an opponent discards a card, you gain 3 life. So what ends up happening is, maybe you fall behind a little bit because this isn't an aggressive deck. The first 3 turns, you're not getting a lot of damage, and maybe you're getting outnumbered. You drop the Sangromancer, she's 3/3. She can hold off smaller creatures, but then as your next turns come into play, you start forcing your opponent to discard cards. You start killing off some of their creatures with things like Baron Spite. You start gaining your the early life that you lost back. So Sangromancer allows you to swing the tide of the deck, allows you to get some of the momentum back, and then she gets to just fly over the enemy battlefield and just slap people in the face for 3 damage at a time. I wouldn't really mind if she kind of just did that to me. Flight of Fancy isn't going to win any awards for amazing art, sexy art of amazing people, amazing art of sexy people, or anything like that. It's a 4 mana enchantment aura. You put it on a creature, and that creature gains flying. Obviously, we already know that flying is instrumental to this deck because getting creatures like Dimir Cutpurse over your opponent's defenses to get that card advantage going is great. But on top of that, Flight of Fancy, when it comes into play, you get to draw 2 cards. That inherently offsets the disadvantages that auras can have because, if your creature dies, you lose aura 2, you lose 2 cards for one of theirs. Flight of Fancy breaks that mold, gets you 2 cards right off the bat, and then could potentially get you tons of cards for the rest of the game depending on what creature you throw it on. It's a great addition to this deck. It's easy to play with only 1 blue mana required, and hey, who wouldn't love to just throw on some little fairy wings and just fly over your opponent's face? Not every creature in Rogue's Gallery needs help to sneak into the enemy base, and a great example of that is Inkfathom Infiltrator. He, she, it, whatever this, I guess it's just a really scary merfolk. Alright, she's an ugly lady. Alright, for 2 mana, she's a 2/1. She can't block, but she's also unblockable. So you're not going to get any defensive value out of Inkfathom Infiltrator. She is all about secrecy, about espionage, getting past defenses, right? Nothing can block her, and that's all the more reason to slap awesome enchantments, awesome equipment on her, get her in there, get free damage your opponent can't stop, and they're going to have a target on her face. But guess what? They can't touch her unless they get some kind of pinger or direct removal. A great way to draw off early removal, but also a great way to sneak in certain cards in the deck that are just going to generate so much card advantage the longer they're in play. And of course, I can't say something like that and not end this preview for Rogue's Gallery without introducing Helm of the Gas Lord. It's 4 mana, split cost, doesn't matter what you want to pay. It's an aura, it goes on a creature, and it basically makes any creature in your deck into a Dimir cut purse, alright? As long as it's blue and black. If they're blue, you get the drawing part. If they're black, you get the discarding part. If it's blue, it gets +1/+1. If it's black, it gets +1/+1. If it's both, you get all that stuff together, +2/+2, and Dimir cut purse. You want to slap this on Dimir cut purse the turn after you played it? It's going to be a 4/4 that whenever it hits the opponent, they discard 2 and you draw 2. I mean, it's absolutely insane. You get this on Inkfathom Infiltrator. You get this on any of your creatures. You throw this on your Sangromancer just because you want her to look pretty. She won't get +2/+2, but she's still going to be absolutely nuts. This is a great complement to creatures in your deck that already have evasion. It's a great complement to creatures in your deck that are already beefy, and now it's just going to be even more painful to block them. And this is just a great complement to the deck in general, supplementing the whole idea that as long as you're playing Rogue's Gallery, your opponent is going to be losing their sanity, and you're going to be profiting with great ideas you draw off the top of your deck. Now for a change of pace with Mana Mastery. This is a completely new concept for the Duels franchise, a true 5-color rainbow deck. And while tasting the rainbow in real life is also typically associated with type 2 diabetes, you can enjoy all 5 flavors of Magic in one pile here with no repercussions whatsoever. Sure, it won't really be easy to get the lands you need when you need them, but Wizards made up for this by making pretty much every card in the deck a game-winning bomb. And I'm not kidding this time, ladies and gentlemen. These cards are hilariously broken. Ladies and gentlemen, do I have a deal for you? His name is Megalanoth, and for a measly 6 mana, not 8 mana, not 7 mana, 6 mana, you're going to get a 6/6 Vigilance Beast. But that's not all. If you order now, I'll throw in Trample absolutely free, and if you call in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to throw in something we like to call Reverse Trample. That's right. Not only does Megalanoth go on the rampage, go on the attack with his 6/6 Trample, alright, dealing damage through blockers. Yes, he has Vigilance, he can stay back to block, but what happens when he blocks? When you attack him, he still deals damage to you. So that's right, you're never safe from Megalanoth. This insane creature just tramples over everything, even over attackers, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but I love him for it. God bless him, everyone. Cultivate is not an exciting card, but it's an important card for Mana Mastery. You're going to be hurling around almost equal parts of every basic land, obviously more forest for cards just like this, but for 3 mana you get a sorcery that lets you fetch out 2 lands out of your deck. They have to be basic lands, right? 2 basic lands. You put 1 directly into play and 1 in your hand. What this basically means is you're ramping yourself 1 turn, because that means turn 4 if you drop a land, you're going to be up to 5 lands, and hopefully if you search out 2 lands from your deck, assuming you had the mana to play this to start with, you now have whatever you need to start your gigantic, godlike, game-ending plays going. So Cultivate, not super cool, not something that your opponent's going to quiver in fear for, but it is something that's going to reliably get you the lands you need to get out the world-winning spells early in the game. Of course, when you accelerate into things, you want them to be exciting things, and Broodmate Dragon is no exception. It's a 6 mana creature, it's a 4/4 flying. You might be like, Wingspan, 6 mana for a 4/4 flying. That seems kind of overcosted, especially with 3 colors in the casting cost. But you see, Broodmate Dragon is a good pilot, and he always has his co-pilot flying close behind, misses Broodmate Dragon, 4/4 flying red dragon that just comes into play whenever this guy decides to show up in the battlefield. So for 6 mana, you get 2 4/4 flyers, major beatdown on the following turn, or major defense, whatever you need. You have 8 power and 8 toughness at your command, and that means your opponent might need to have to use 2 cards to remove it. Really great for just swinging things in your favor and just being a little bit evil. Now, I wasn't playing Paper Magic when the Bant Charm came out, but I respect its power, and you should too. You're not always going to be able to play this particular charm on turn 3, but when you do, it's going to give you the tools you need to set up your late game play. So let's see, 3 mana, 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue, the obvious Fant colors, instant, and you get to choose, you can choose one item. It's basically like the Chinese menu, except you can't get like vegetable spring rolls on the side. It's a little bit unfortunate. You can destroy an artifact, which is a great ability. A lot of the decks in this game don't have a way to deal with artifacts, okay? You can put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. So someone's hitting you with some early aggression, Peacekeepers is up in your face, someone's got some Phyrexian giant 5/5 creature you can't deal with, bam, bottom of the library. Or counter target instant spell, so it can deal with creatures by getting rid of them. It can deal with instants that may be giving you a hard time, or it can deal with artifacts that a lot of decks simply can't do. This is a great utility charm, a great utility instant to have in this deck. Great early game, great late game, great all around. You better be playing it. Longtime Duels fans will recognize the art of Imperial Archangel, which was one of the earlier art to be used in kind of the loading screens of Duels of the Planeswalkers. Now you can play with this goddamn amazing bomb. I mean, it's 8 mana, it is expensive, she's in the Bant color range, so we're still carrying that over, green, white, white, blue, and then 4 of whatever you want. She's a 5/8 creature, 5/8 creature for 8, alright, not bad. Flying, alright, okay, so she could swing in for the beats, and Shroud. She's not getting targeted by anything that your opponents have to throw at her. Of course, you can't target her either, but that's not really, very important for this deck. But on top of all that, on top of the fact that she's a 5/8 that can't be targeted, damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to Imperial Archangel instead. So if your opponent can't deal more than 8 damage, more than 7 damage to you in one swing, they're not killing Imperial Archangel. They're going to have to get 8 damage worth of blockers, flyers in the air, attackers, something like that. But basically what that also means is that things like lightning helices and shocks and lightning bolts, any kind of damage that would normally go to your face, goes to her instead. She's like, hey, I understand it's rough out there. It's hard being a Planeswalker. It's hard out there for a walker. And you know what? I'm going to be your pal. I'm going to take my big sword, take my big wings, take a big hit on the face for you, and then I'm going to go after the bitch who did it to you and go swing the sword in their face for 5 damage. Amazing card, amazing art, amazing mechanics. Great way to just, show your opponent who's the boss. That's not Tony Danza. Besides the fact that Lava Lanche has one of the coolest names in all of Magic the Gathering card naming history, it is just an incredibly important sorcery for this deck. For X and 3 mana, you're hitting the black mana, the red mana, the green mana. For X, whatever you're paying above 3, Lava Lanche deals X damage to target player and each creature he or she controls. So it's not exactly Bonfire of the Damned or anything like that, but it's still a one-sided burn spell that's going to absolutely level the playing field for you. Even at a measly cost of 5 mana, doing 2 damage to your opponent and every creature they control, totally one-sided, can swing the game very quickly, wiping out all their weenies, whittling away at their health. And of course, if you ramp up, if you get a lot of land out, you land this late game after you've already cleared the board a couple times and now they're just barely scraping their army back together. Bam! Lava Lanche to face for 10 damage to all their creatures. Even Imperial Archangel wouldn't survive that. And no, it doesn't have to target their creatures. Lava Lanche is what this deck needs. It's one of the many sweepers in this deck that will allow it to catch up against faster decks and start bringing the pain on uncontested. Speaking of pain, nothing says pain like Giant Avatar Baby. That's right. You get to, if you're thinking of ways, how can I induce rage in my opponent? How can I make them just so mad that I won? Not just winning, but making them mad, making them rage quit out of the game. You want Child of Alara on your side of the board. It's one of every color mana, but I understand that's hard to do. Even with a really lucky Cultivate, you could drop this turn 4 if you had a good draw. All right, 6/6 Trample, or possibly as early as turn 4 or 5. All right. 6/6 trample creature, and that's not all. When Child of Alara dies, you get to destroy all non-land permanents. All right, so this baby is a big whining brat right out. It's like, if I can't live, if I can't survive in the battlefield, no one and nothing can. Your opponent is not going to be happy to see this, because unless they have a way to immediately stop it, and there's ways, pacifying things like that, but if they can't stop it, even if they can stop it, they're going to be paying the price. This is absolutely brutal. Early game, late game, whenever your opponent has more cards on the board than you do, and hey, considering how expensive your cards are and the fact that you know this is coming and they don't, it's absolutely hilarious. And hey, if you want, you can kill it yourself and just let the lulls be had. Speaking of both genocide and baby killing, we have Day of Judgment. And while Day of Judgment doesn't specifically come for Child of Alara, it does make everything hilarious. Like I was saying before with Child of Alara and Lavalanche, there are a lot of sweepers in this deck. Your opponent is going to pay if they think they're going to outrace you. You're the master of mana. You have the mana mastery, and a lot of people are going to be jealous. They're going to be jealous of your Fruit Loops and your Skittles and your Rainbows and having every color in the deck. So they're going to try to get all their cards out really fast, right? And they're going to try to damage you and get 20 damage on the board fast, and you're going to be like, nope. Day of Judgment, nope. Lavalanche, nope. Child of Alara. Day of Judgment plays such a great role in punishing people for overextending, and if you look really closely, I think you can see a Child of Alara being born in the background. You know, it'd be so funny to drop Day of Judgment one turn, clear the board, and then just drop Child of Alara directly after that. Like, oh, you thought the fun was over. Nope, it's just beginning, and the fun starts when your fun ends. Maelstrom Archangel is another creature that comes out for one of every color. So she kind of represents everything there is to Magic: the natural, the unnatural, the good, the bad, the ugly, the spiritual, the emotional. But anyway, enough lore. She's a 5/5 flyer, which is, you know, maybe you're like, okay, well, I'd rather have Child of Alara or Sliver of Queen or something powerful, a little bit more powerful for my 5 mana. But check out her ability. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, which is not too hard with the flying, with the fact that you probably killed every single creature on the board a couple times, you get to choose any card in your hand and play without paying its mana cost. So there are tons of cards in this deck that you've already seen and way more that you haven't seen. They're just absolutely brutal, absolutely overpowered, absolutely game winning on their own. And guess what? As long as Maelstrom Archangel is on the board and swinging, you're going to get a free one every turn. It is gross, it is sick, it is hilarious. It should be in your deck, and your opponent is going to cry every time she attacks. Finally, and most deliciously, comes Maelstrom Nexus. So you've already seen the Maelstrom Archangel, but here's the Nexus itself. Here was what was doing all the chaos in the shards. We have one of every mana. This enchantment, you're like, I'm not gonna pay one of every mana for enchantment. What the hell is that? Like, shouldn't I be winning the game automatically for paying one of every mana? Well, you may not win the game automatically, but your victory is going to come very, very quickly if your opponent doesn't immediately remove Maelstrom Nexus. And why is that? Because this enchantment gives the first spell you play each turn, that includes your opponent's turns, by the way, Cascade. And what does Cascade do if you're not already familiar with it? Whenever you play a spell, you can just reveal cards off the top of your library, and the first thing that costs less than that spell, you can play absolutely free. This is so gross, it basically gives you an extra free spell every turn, including your opponent's turn. So whenever you play anything, you get a second spell absolutely free. It's the true buy one, get one special. This is only available on the Planeswalker Home Shopping Network. And when you drop this into play, your opponent better have a game plan, because if they don't, the only game plan they're going to have is to lose immediately to you and the power of Mana Mastery. Anyway, I'm Wingspan TT from TopTierTactics.com. I hope you enjoyed this deck overview, and I hope you're looking forward to playing with both of these decks. Both Mana Mastery and Rogues Gallery really fit into the kind of decks I like to play. Decks that feel just a little bit evil. Decks that feel like a little bit, you know, your opponent is wincing on the other side of the screen. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to picking them up, and I look forward to seeing you online in Duels of the Planeswalkers 2013.